My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to all things Port Adelaide Football Club. I'm your host for this evening, Macca 19, and with me tonight is regular co-host Fishing Rico 4. How you going, buddy?
Yeah, good thanks, Macca. What about you?
Yeah, good mate, good. And we've also got regular guest DonDraper with us again this evening.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good mate.
Yeah, good thanks.
Good to have you back.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's been a pretty big week in football, to quote Eddie Maguire. Obviously, we had the grand final. There's been quite a bit of trade discussion already. And obviously some big trade moves with Buddy and Mumford looking like leaving their clubs. So I think what we might do just to start off with was just to get your thoughts on the grand final. Obviously, Hawthorn won by, I think, 16 points in the end. Rick, I might start with you, mate.
Yeah, no dramas. Well, I'll be brutally honest again this week. I thought the grand final was a perfect opportunity for me to go out shopping and look for some furniture. So I did that, and in between I followed the score on my mobile phone and watched it on TV at Harvey Norman. And then listening to all the reviews this week, I've got to say it sounds like I didn't miss out on too much. Everyone sort of has been trash canning it in relation to the spectacle, and it was a bit underwhelming and everything else. And I did see the last quarter, and it was pretty intense. And I saw a bit of the third, and I thought Freo mounted a good comeback, and made at least an interesting contest and a bit of a game of it. And really, they had missed opportunities, which cost them in the end. And unfortunately, Sean Burgoyne won a premiership, which is a bit underwhelming from a Port Adelaide perspective.
That was the biggest disappointment for me.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I shouldn't be bitter, but I really didn't want him to win a grand final. I would have been much more happier with Daniel Pearce winning a grand final. But I'm happy for Guerra, because I always felt like he was a little bit hard done by here at Port Adelaide and didn't really get the opportunities. And what a career he's really grounded out for himself over the three clubs, And I mean, for a guy that was, a bit short, a bit slow, I mean, fantastic and well done to him. What do you guys think?
He was my best. He was my favourite player when he was with us. I absolutely loved him, and I loved him.
Yeah,
I thought he was a great player, and he just didn't really get a go. I thought he'd become a really good, hard at it sort of midfielder, sort of like a older Tommy Logan sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it just didn't really happen. He was always on the bench, or he'd just get dropped, and I don't know. He just didn't really settle in here. But I'm really, really happy that he ended with 2 premierships to his name.
Yeah, he had a great career all up, really. Considering he has been at 3 clubs, most players that go to 3 clubs aren't very good. You'd think, a bit of a journeyman, but he was pretty decent at everywhere he went, and he's won two flags, so pretty happy for him.
Yeah, I wasn't really impressed with the grand final, to be honest. I don't know. I just sort of zoned out halfway through. The first half was terrible. It reminded me of watching sort of, St Kilda versus Melbourne, sort of like, halfway through the year on a Sunday afternoon in front of 18,000 people at the MCG. It was just terrible.
There's a few more than that there, though.
A couple. I mean, the skills were terrible. Even Hawthorn in the first half just didn't really play all that convincing football. They just made the most of their chances, whereas Freo they really should have been in front at half time, but they blew their chance at winning their first attempt at a premiership, really.
It's funny you say that, because I've had a few people say that. I always got the impression Hawthorn were kind of in control, like they just were dictating the play a bit, but maybe I'm wrong, because I don't know, I always thought that Fremantle were always going to come back, but I still thought it was Hawthorn's to lose, if that makes sense.
I think Hawthorn definitely had control of the game for pretty much all bar about 20 minutes in the third quarter. But you never know what happens. I mean, if Fife kicks those 2 goals to open the first quarter, I mean, the whole game changes, really. Yeah. So, if Pav kicks his, if Pearce kicks his, if Ballantyne kicks one of his misses, the whole landscape of the game, they put the pressure back on Hawthorn, and maybe they start to fret a little bit like they did last year. You never know what happens then.
Just on
Was
Hayden
it tr-
Valentine, he had one of the all-time worst grand finals I can remember. And I really rate Valentine. He's a great player, but he talks the talk every single game. He gets stuck in. He's this cocky,
absolutely.
arrogant loudmouth he backs it up by performing. I mean, round one next year, surely everyone's going to get stuck into him, right? Biggest stage,
absolutely.
You'd have to.
He just choked,
That was an absolute choke. It wasn't the fact that, I mean, Leon Davis obviously had a couple of talked
One
about
tackle,
grand
was it?
finals where he didn't really get the ball, but I mean, if you were Freo, you probably didn't want Valentine you'd probably want him to have had donuts that day, just because everything he touched, the wrong thing happened every time he went near it.
Didn't Fife burn the ball a fair bit as well?
He did, but he had a pretty good game overall.
Yeah, took some great marks. Did he? What did you think of Norm Smith?
I absolutely hate Lake. I think he's been probably the most overrated player of the last 20 years. People were calling him the defender of the millennium and all this rubbish, and good on him, because obviously he went there. It was a mutually decent deal in the end. He went there for a premiership, and Hawthorn got him so they could win a premiership, and it happened. So, in the end, good on him. But I didn't really think he was best on ground. I thought it should have gone to Birchall, really.
I thought Jack Gunston was a bit stiff. I thought
he would have
kicked
been my
4 early, kind of set them on their way.
He would have been my second choice.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a funny one with Lake, and I think if Fremantle had snuck home, because don't they do the votes quite early? I think because Fremantle kind of came home pretty strong. If they'd been able to kick a bit straighter and won, Lake probably still would have won the Norm Smith.
I think they changed the voting to after the game finished, after the whole Buckley Voss furore in 2002. But I thought Birchall should have won it, followed by sort of Gunston, Mundy, and then Lake as fourth best, I think.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Good on Mr. Elbow.
Yeah. Anyway, whilst we're on the topic of Hawthorn, we might as well talk about Buddy Franklin for a couple of minutes. I mean, for me, ever since free agency came in last year, I think it's been destined that Buddy would go. Someone would pay, through the nose for him, and it looks like Sydney have discovered that their cost of living allowance is the same as the GDP of Europe, and are able to afford him. So that's certainly unexpected. I think everyone sort of expected him to either go back west or go to GWS, but it looks like Sydney have pulled a Swifty there.
It's a kick in the guts to GWS, though, isn't it? It's everyone expected it to be GWS, and I'm sure the AFL was expecting GWS, and then to go to Sydney. I mean, and I could see why Sydney want to do it. They really want to stamp their authority on that market, and it leads me to. I don't know. We're going to talk about Pollock in a sec, but if I think about it a bit more holistically, I think it may. I think the race now for us and the Crows over Pollock's the same sort of thing. It's almost a territorial thing now, and it wouldn't hurt us at all to really push to get that, because it's just getting some dominance in the marketplace, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it probably is poor for GWS that they missed out on him. But it's kind of funny that now Mumford's looks set to join GWS, and GWS have come out and said, well, we're pretty much just going to pick him up in the pre-season draft and you can get stuffed. Whereas I think if he went anywhere else, they'd be, probably get, a first or a high second round draft pick for him, really.
Definitely. Yeah. I think Mumford's a great pickup for them. I think, I was thinking late in games next year, potentially, Giles could go into the ruck and they could push Mumford forward along with Cameron, Boyd and Patton, and that's just phenomenal. You can't mark them, But I think Mumford, he's probably got another, at least 2-3 years at the top of his game to come.
Well, I think he's 27, so you think, probably 3 or 4 years. But he has had a few injuries this year, and considering he's quite a bulky fella, maybe, I don't know, maybe he might sort of slow down a little bit earlier than expected.
Is he a forward, though? Does he have much forward impact in games? I think
he's had a pretty decent year up forward. Just let me quickly check.
Well, it's tough at Sydney because they have Pike and I guess even now Tippett that can go into the ruck and then play forward too. So he probably doesn't need to at Sydney. Or even you could still have those 3 big forwards and you could play Mumford a kick behind the play,
Yeah.
GWS
It's a
doesn't
good
have the
problem to
ruck
have.
depth of Gold Coast either, for example, do they? So,
Well,
they'd
that's
be
it.
Gold
I
Coast
think
would be
I think
trading.
it's a great deal for GWS to pick up a ready-made first-string ruckman who's been on the brink of All-Australian a couple of times now. I think it's a fantastic pickup, especially if they do get him very, very, very cheaply.
Absolutely.
How do we think Buddy will go in Sydney? Do we think he'll light it up, or do we think there might be a bit of a slowish start to his career? I think he'll go in there and from the first bounce, he'll be fantastic for them. I think this year, he did have his ups and downs, but I reckon this contract was probably playing on his mind a fair bit. So I think now that it's all settled, I think he'll enjoy being the king of Sydney. I don't know how Kurt Tippett might feel, but...
I don't know if the SCG is really the best oval for Buddy and the two-prong forward line because it's so small, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit narrow.
Historically.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you look at the forwards that have gone through the SCG, like I guess Kappa, Lockett, Barry Hole. I mean, they've all kicked a lot of goals, so I don't know. I reckon Buddy will kick 80 plus next year. I reckon he'll have a ripper.
But you're going to what? So you're going to have Tippett and Buddy full forward and forward pocket and both starting deep, and
I think they complement each other pretty well because Buddy can play anywhere in the forward half, and he's that quick and that strong that he can just belt away and get the ball on the wing and kick it forward. I mean, Tippett's more that sort of contested marking forward. I reckon they'll be really hard to beat next year. With that
I think
Tippett
will play deeper, much deeper, and Buddy will just roam free. He'll could even push up to a wing even, and just, it's...
I think with Mumford leaving, we'll see Tippett play that sort of similar role to what he did at the Crows in that sort of half forward, half ruck sort of combination, I think. So, I don't know.
It's a bit... I find it, as a Port supporter, a little bit deflating because... It's a little for a supporter base. I think it's always uplifting to be able to sort of grab a marquee name, and to me it sort of just rubs it in a little bit. We've struggled to sort of grab marquee names in the past, and I can't see it getting any easier in the future. And but it would be really nice to. I know we're developing our own from within, but sometimes it's good from a supporter-based perspective to be able to bring in one of the name player or whatever and really light up the town. Hopefully one day that might change.
Yeah, well, we might as well start talking about a few of the trade discussions that have happened so far in the last week. We might as well start with Matthew White from Richmond. Looks like he's set to join us as a free agent, possibly on a 3-year deal. He's had a bit of interest from, I think, 5 other clubs as well. How do we see that working out?
Well, you speak about your marquee names, Rick. Matthew White, there you go.
Oh, mate, top of the list.
Forget your Buddy Franklin.
Didn't we delist him, 6 years ago?
That was Damon White.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I was like, really? Being brutally honest with Matt White here, I've never really given him much notice until about a week ago when it was all kind of rumoured. I was really surprised he won Richmond's most improved. I think that's quite a good sign. And this might sound stupid, but just being on the board and having Richmond fans talk about their love for Matt White is good. He's obviously got a pretty good connection with their fan base, which I think will bode well for us. It seems like the kind of character that the club wants. That really likable, team first type of player. And he's obviously quite quick too, and that does feel a need. I think if we get him, where do you reckon he'll play? Do you think he'll go to that half forward flank, forward pocket, or more up the ground?
I think he'll play on a wing and sort of half forward flank. Personally, I reckon that's where I see him playing.
Because I was thinking if he comes into that half forward type role, then we'll probably see Chad and Gray get more midfield time, which is a big plus,
Yeah, well, that's what we want.
If we can move or rotate them through without losing a speedy presence on the half forward line, that's a win. At the end of the day, the only thing that really worries me is the length of the contract, and I reckon there'll probably be clauses put in and all that we don't know about, but I just have so much faith in Hinckley and the coaches right now that if they've identified him and they think he can play a big role for us, I'm willing to back them in, So
yeah, look, I'm I think my opinion on Matthew White is well known. I've not really liked him as a footballer for a long, long time. But look, in the end, we need quick players in the side. We're not going to be able to get an Isaac Smith or someone like that because we'll have to give up far too much for them. In the end, if Matty White can come in, I mean, who predicted that Monfries would have a career year this year? I mean, I don't think anybody would have predicted he would have the best year of his career. All the guys that we've brought in the last 12 months have been really good for the club. And if the club is saying, hey, we want Matthew White in our side, then who am I to sort of judge or say otherwise, really? And look, we really need some pace in the side. He will bring that. I guess we just got to hope that he can turn that sort of 12 to 14 disposal player into a more of a 16 to 18 disposal and a goal a game player. And if we can do that, then that's a big win, I think.
And Macca, someone, I can't remember who pointed it out today on the forum, so I apologise to them in advance, but I thought it was a very good point that he might be targeted to run with those players like Shannon Motlop, who really carved us up this year running out of defence, and because we really lack that leg speed with our players. So I thought that was a very, very valid point, and Shannon Motlop wasn't the only one that did that to us during the year, so he might be able to play that.
Shannon Motlop retired about 8 years ago, but I think...
Oh, what's his name? Stephen, whatever.
Shannon Motlop and Damon White, yeah?
You raised a very good point, and I think that's a job that White's done in the past, is as a tagger on those quicker type players, and we've really had no one to go with those players this year at all. So if he can come in and do that sort of role as well, I mean, it's only going to be a big bonus for us, really.
Yeah.
We might as well move on and talk about Polek. He's probably been the main target, especially on our boards in the off-season. The thread's grown really, really quickly. It's a bit of a race between us and the Crows at the moment, between who gets his signature. Where do you see him fitting in, if we can get him?
I really want him. I've got him written here, Jared Polek, want. And I know Rick said earlier that it'd be good to beat the Crows to him. I don't really think that's much of a big deal, personally. I think that I want him because I think he's going to be a good player. He's number 5 pick 2 years ago. To have him just thrown into our midfield rotations would be massive. It'd be a huge win. He supposedly was a Port fan growing up, which is even better. And I know there's been doubts over his attitude, but at the end of the day, he's not going to play for us under our current regime if he doesn't deserve to play. Like they're not going to pick him if his attitude stinks, you know. And I think he will just add a bit more dash to us, especially around the clearance of stoppages, just that extra out. And I don't think you can really take too much into what he did at Brisbane, even though he didn't do all that much, because it seems like every young player there seems to want out at the moment.
Well, that's it. I mean, you've got to take that sort of poor attitude with a bit of a grain of salt, I think, just because you look at Brisbane and there's about 6 or 7 players that are looking to leave at the moment.
And all youngish players too.
Yeah, that's right. They're all sort of first, second or third year players that want to leave. So you really got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, really. I think Polek would be a fantastic get. I think he's the type of player that we need. He's an outside runner. He's fairly quick. He can deliver the ball. Jonathan Brown has said he's the best kick to a lead he's played with, and he's played with some really bloody good players and some really, really excellent kicks. So, yeah, I'd be absolutely stoked if we can get them. I reckon he's going to lean towards the Crows just because of the money and also the Brodie Smith, Cam Ellis, Yeoman factor. But look, if we get him, I'll be absolutely stoked.
What can the Crows offer? Because surely he still has to be traded, though, right? So
yeah, well, they don't have much.
Not that I really want to talk about the Crows too much, but I think it's pretty clear that, you know, Macca, Henderson, McKernan, they've got a few players that will get them sort of second-round picks. I think someone will be stupid enough to give a second-round pick for Sean McKernan. Macca and Henderson probably deserve that. And if they do get that, then bang, straight away, they'll probably have a better pick than what we've got.
Would you give up our second-round pick for Jared Polek?
Absolutely.
Yeah, same.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I would.
I think it's worth the gamble, and as I said earlier, I think from a marketing perspective, I mean, it will just throw the media into a frenzy. I'd push hard, and honestly, I would. I'd match them, and it's about time we sort of tried to stamp a bit more territory in the media, and obviously that's been a plan this year to try and do that on a national level, and we've been succeeding. And I think if we can get up on the Crows with polling, that would absolutely burn. Then surely we'd have the space to be able to sort of get close to matching it.
I think the thing that sort of, I don't know, that I don't understand is that everyone says, oh, well, the Crows have got an open spot for him in the side straight away. Well, so do we. I mean, we're lacking his sort of player just as much as the Crows are. So, if we get him, I think he's an absolute lock for round one, and would most likely, if he stays fit, would play every game next year.
Oh, he'll be a walk-in player for us, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Well, we've got a history of nurturing and supporting those high draft picks and playing them as much as possible for their development. So, why wouldn't we?
Now, Mitch Robinson is another one that we've been linked to. I think the club's cooled on it a little bit. It's been a bit of conjecture about that one. Half the people sort of on our boards think he's an absolute arse clown. The other half reckon it would be a fantastic pickup. I'm in the second half who think he'd be an absolutely fantastic pickup if we got him. What do you guys think about that?
I'm not unopposed to it. I think if we got him, he'd start for us. I think if people are thinking that he might be a bit of depth, he'll definitely start for us. And what he can do, he can offer us a bit of heavy lifting and help our more skilled players, especially our younger players, just from getting a bit overawed. Not that I think that they are really had a pretty good year, but just to create that extra bit of space and time when they have to have the ball. Mitch Robinson's he's a battler, and you do need these type of players. He knows he's not the most skilled player, but he's a team first player. I think he fits that ethos on field of what we're trying to build. Does have a few brain fades though, and all I can think of is that final when he punched the ball through, on the full. I know he did have a good last quarter, but for some reason that just sticks with me. I would still take him though, but I wouldn't want to give up much for him. Yeah.
I think
I just find him underwhelming.
See, I'm the opposite. I reckon he's a pretty underrated player. I think in terms of his toughness, he is an absolute maniac, and I think we sometimes.
Who would you push out of the final team for him?
Oh, Kasisi.
He probably takes Tom Logan's spot, doesn't he?
Tom Logan, Colquhoun, Aaron Young, absolutely straight away. If we got Mitch Robinson, look, Mitch Robinson's been a first-team player for a club that's won more games than we have in the last few years, and went just as far into the finals as we did. He was second for Carlton in tackles, second in inside 50s, top 5 in clearances, and I think in disposals as well. So look, he can get the ball, he gets it in close, he can deliver it, he kicks goals. He's an absolute madman. I reckon it'd be a fantastic pickup if we got him. I reckon he'd suit our style of play. He might be, obviously he's not all there mentally, I don't think, but look, in terms of his actual football, I think he'd be an incredibly good pickup if we got him.
But you say it's cooling the interest, or I haven't heard much of since that. So
I think Hinkley was on the radio and they sort of said, "Oh, look, we've sort of mildly discussed him, but that's as far as it's gone at this point." Whereas he was absolutely, talking rings around sort of Matthew White and Nathan Vardy and Pollock. I think we definitely want these players. Whereas with Robinson, he was like, "Yeah, well, we've sort of spoken about him," and that was about it.
Well, Malthouse on the radio yesterday didn't seem overly keen on flicking off on Robinson either, so maybe he still is a required player with Carlton.
It could just be these Carlton mind games.
The Carlton recruiting manager came out and said, "I've got no idea where this talk of Robinson being traded is coming from. He's not going anywhere, so we might not even have the chance to get him, really."
Yeah, that's right.
And the fourth player we've been linked to is Nathan Vardy, who's a tall sort of ruck forward for Geelong. He's been in the system for a few years now. He's had a few injuries, but he's starting to get more games into his system. Where do you think he would fit in?
Not in our starting team. I'd be preferring to start Redden and Lobe, to be honest, and especially as long as Redden's fit. But hopefully we're not recruiting him as a first 22 footballer, because I wouldn't want to see either of those two boys squeezed out from him, and then he'd be battling with Renouf. So I don't know how long he'd be with us before he'd be a bit disgruntled about not getting enough game time.
I think we might see him more as a forward than a ruckman.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. As a forward, I don't know, it's tough. I'd probably rather persist with Butcher and see how Mason Shaw comes on, to be honest, or maybe try and get someone else. Not really that big a fan of Vardy. I mean, if we got him, I'd back him in and everything, but I don't really think I want him, no.
Given Lobie's form this year, I think he's made sort of going after Vardy a little bit redundant. I was well into Vardy at the end of last year. I thought we should have targeted him then. But given Lobie's form in the ruck, and with how Redden can play as well, I think it's made sort of going after him a tiny bit redundant.
Yeah. I mean, you can't carry Loeb, Redden and Vardy, I think, all in the first starting 22. I just don't think it would work.
Yeah, I think we definitely need another tall forward. I think there's no doubt about that, and an experienced one as well. But I'm just not sure he's the right one. I'm just not sure he's going to turn into a sort of a 35 to 40 goal key forward. Really.
Is there one though, like that's around? I know we need one, and we all know we need one, and even the coaches have come out and said they'd like one, but I haven't heard anyone linked.
What about Podsiadly?
Well, I mean, he's obviously an option and he can kick that amount of goals, but, I mean, do we really want to go after a 31, 32-year-old player that's such a short-term option? I mean, if we made the prelim this year and were a kick away from a grand final and thought, hey, that's our missing link for a premiership, you'd sort of say, yeah, maybe we should go after Podsiadly, but I think given that we're most likely another 2 or 3 years away, I'm just not sure. Even on a minimum term contract, I'd rather put the time into Shaw, probably.
But doesn't it give Shaw and Butcher a bit more time to develop and not feel maybe that pressure of underperforming? And, I guess if Pods came over here sort of as a coaching contract, physio contract, playing contract, knowing that he might not play the whole season and the boys are going to have a bit of priority as well, it might not hurt.
Yeah.
I'd probably rather us go after someone that isn't James Podsiadly, though. Like,
I'd rather us go after someone like Robbie Tarrant, someone like that, who's still got youth on his side, has proven that he can kick a few goals and take some marks, and could hopefully develop into that player that when he's 26, 27 can be a 40 to 50 goal forward for us.
Yeah. Get on board with that. What about a draft, though? Could we draft one? Like, or do you reckon a ready-made forward is the way to go?
I'm not sure there's a ready-made forward in the draft. Certainly not that I've seen in the VFL or SANFL. In terms of youth, I mean, obviously there's a few around, so like Cameron McCarthy or Mitch Harvey, someone like that.
Yeah.
So that's always an option. I think we've been linked with Cameron McCarthy.
I'd really like Cameron McCarthy. I think if he's there, we'll take him. Definitely.
Isn't there your mate Mitch Thorpe available too, Macca?
Oh, yeah, probably. Probably. I'd rather skip that one, personally. But
You don't sound too enthused.
Well, 70 goals playing against a bunch of clowns in the friggin' TFL doesn't really set my juices flowing, to be honest, unlike a few other people on our board, but and seemingly the rest of the football world. So good on him for obviously maturing as a human. Look, as we said on the podcast before, he burned us once before, and really I'm not too keen to go there for a second time.
Yeah, fair enough. Indeed. What about Daniel Webb? What's he doing in the SANFL?
Not a whole lot.
He hasn't come on at all.
Nah, absolutely.
What about Nick Salter?
Well, yeah, there's a good SANFL
there's an
goal
option.
kicking forward.
Yeah, kicked a good goal last week.
We got the power to win, power to roll. Come on, Port Adelaide aggression. We are the power from Port.
So what we might do is we might move into the player reviews. What we're going to do over the next 3 or 4 weeks is review all the players. We're going to do around about 10 players each week. Just talk about how their year went and where we see them going in the next sort of 12 months. We're going to do it in alphabetical order just so it changes things up a little bit. So we'll start with Brendon Ah Chee. obviously, it was his second year on the list. He's a bit of a midfielder. We took him 2 years ago in the draft as a very, very young, low-age player. And I thought he developed reasonably well in the SANFL this year. Last year, he played exclusively in the SANFL reserves. This year, he played 15 games at SANFL league level, averaged around about 14 disposals and 5 marks a game. How did we see his year?
He's getting there. As you know, I've had a few chats to Brendon, and when he talks to me, he's saying that he's always working on a few things, and one of the things he's trying to work on is his disposal. For example, getting more disposal and getting that consistently. And I guess as a young boy, he's still trying to work his way into the team, and and Port's got some senior midfielders. I guess confidence can play an issue, but I think he's getting there, and I think he deserves another contract because we took him as a young player, as a bit of a project player, and I don't think sometimes we're too quick with these young boys to go, oh well, what, we drafted them, they've had 2 years and they're no good, let's write them off. And not everyone's like that. I mean, look at Aaron Young, he's 3 years in the system now, I think, isn't he? And he's just starting to show promise now. And I mean, we've got that space, I think, to carry a couple of players like Brendon and give him a good opportunity to try and develop in the system and see where he gets to.
Yeah, I think consistency was the key to his year this year. I think he had a really consistent year in the SANFL. I think out of his 15 games, he picked up 15 or more disposals in 10 of them. Showed that he could kick a few goals as well. Don, what do you reckon?
He'd be a pretty big midfielder, wouldn't he?
I think he's 188 centimetres, so
okay,
he's
yeah.
on the taller side.
Yeah,
he's about my height.
I think if he can come on, he'll be an absolute gun. Like, I have a bit of concern, but I didn't watch his good games. When I saw him, he looked a bit out of place on the ball, but by all accounts, he had a really good, strong finish to the season. And hearing the interviews with Rick, he seems like a really good kid. Like, he's got a good head on his shoulders. So I'm excited by Archie. I'd really like to see him get a run next year, along with a few other players that I think he'll definitely. Is he out of contract at the end of next year, or?
No, I think he's out of contract now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you would think he would get another one.
Yeah, hopefully sign him up. Yeah.
I think you mentioned how you'd like to see him get a run. I would like to see him get a run as well, but I'm just not sure where he fits in at this point. Just because he is that sort of inside midfielder. Which we have quite a lot of. I think in terms of the midfielders on our list, he's probably bottom of the barrel at the moment. So he'd be relying on injuries or drastic improvement next year to get a run.
Oh, hopefully the latter.
I think it will come.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think his goal needs to be, too. If he can sort of improve his disposal count up towards that sort of 20 disposal, 5 or 6 mark, maybe a goal a game. If he can do that, then he will really start to push for AFL selection, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool.
All right, next player on the list is Nathan Blee. It was his second year on the list as well. He's been delisted at the end of this season. He's had a fantastic year in the SANFL, and as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I think he's probably been a little bit hard done by in getting delisted. His SANFL form was excellent, very, very consistent. He averaged over 20 disposals and 4 marks a game, playing on a half-back flank and pushing up through the midfield. Don, I might start with you with this one. How did you see his year?
I thought it was a bit harsh to get cut, to be honest. I didn't expect it at all, and I'm actually really happy that he gets to play in a grand final this week. Good luck to him. I think he's a victim of never really having a set position for us. Like, we didn't really know what to do with him, and he didn't stand out anywhere. So he's almost a bit too versatile for his own good. I was very surprised that he got cut, because even when he came, I think he came in against Geelong this year, and he wasn't fantastic, but I didn't think he was terrible either, So,
yeah, I thought he was pretty good. I thought he was pretty good against Geelong.
Yeah.
He was pretty handy last week in the final for North. I thought he played very well.
His 3 finals, he's been North Adelaide's best finals player so far.
He plays on a wing for them, does he?
He plays sort of as a roaming sort of back flanker and pushing up through the midfield. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Mm.
And look,
'Cause
I think for someone his size, that's a great sort of string to his bow. I think
Yeah.
he's probably a victim of circumstance where we've got a lot of undersized key defenders. We've got sort of Homsch, we've got Campbell Heath, there's Tom Cleary, who had a really good year as well, and then there's Nathan Blee. And I think what we do need is another monster key defender. And I think the club's made the decision, look, Nathan Blee's probably bottom of that list, so we'll get rid of him to get in another very tall key defender who can take some of those taller key forwards that we've struggled with this year.
There's nothing standout with Nathan, unfortunately, I think, isn't it? It's just, I guess, and that's what you need at his height and his position. You need to be able to do something really well, and he just hasn't been able to cement his spot. But, hopefully he gets another opportunity in the system with somebody else.
I think his ability to win the ball, and lots of it at SANFL level, and be that real creator from the half-back line is a standout. I think that's something that is a fantastic thing to have. And look, if we chose to rookie him, I'd be absolutely delighted at that. And I think he might maybe get another go somewhere else. You never know.
I think if he can win a flag on Sunday, and if he's been in their best, and maybe a chance for a best on ground, he'll surely get picked up, even rookie listed somewhere else.
Yep. All right, next player is the big captain, Travis Boak. I mean,
Legend.
We could wax lyrical for about 45 minutes about his year, I think.
We could do a whole podcast on him.
we could. The captain's podcast. Just what a brilliant year he had. He really took that captaincy by heart. He grabbed it by the balls and ran with it. And just the amount of games that he had a massive, massive influence in. Look, he won our Player of the Year on the boards as well in the voting. He finished second in the best and fairest. First time All-Australian. What a fantastic year. For us, we had him best on ground in 6 games and second best in another 3. So he had a really consistent year. First in inside 50s, clearances and contested possessions, second in disposals, fourth in tackles and fifth in goals for the club.
Great season.
Phenomenal.
But not only that, what about his leadership? I thought as a leader, he was fantastic this year. He dragged us over the line in a few games, and he stood up and really looked like he inspired the boys. And, that's sometimes nothing you could see in a statistical sense. But, everyone was talking about Joel Selwood as captain of the year. But I thought Travis, I know people say I'm a bit biased, but I thought he was right up there.
Oh, absolutely.
Agree more on that,
His 2 showdowns were inspirational beyond belief. Just the way that he wrestled us back into the game in the first one, and had such a big last quarter there, and obviously the last quarter in the second showdown where he had something like 16 disposals and 8 clearances or something like that to really win us the game. And he did it 2 weeks later against Gold Coast as well, and had a ripping final against Geelong. He had a brilliant season, and as I've said a couple of times now, he's had probably the best captain's year I've seen from a Port Adelaide captain.
I think even in that West Coast big comeback, he kicked 2 in the last quarter, So he leads by example too. You guys are a bit older than me, slightly, just a bit. So you probably you might laugh at this, but I actually can't think of another Port player I've loved more than Travis. Like, I think he's just fantastic, and he epitomises everything that we're about now, like especially in terms of moving forward. Like, when he signed on, he committed and he lifted his own game, and in turn, everyone around is a better player because of him improving. Like, he just carries us, And he's also a really likable guy. Like, if you talk to other fans of other clubs, they like and they just have so much respect for him. He's a really well respected and massively loved footy player.
Well, he goes in hard, he gets the ball, he's skillful, he kicks goals. What's not to like about him, really? I mean, he's not dirty.
Exactly.
I mean, he's never been reported. He's just not that type of player. And yeah, look, he'd probably squeeze into my top 10 favourite Port players of all time at the moment.
Doesn't duck his head either.
No, it doesn't duck his head.
Bend the knees, you mean?
Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting him once, and my girlfriend claims it's the cutest thing she's ever seen, because I was just gushing.
Brilliant. All right, next player up is Matty Broadbent, the Cobra. The player sponsor for our board this year. Love it. How did we see his year?
Well, he started well, didn't he? And then he sort of plateaued, and then he came good. I think that he's showing promise, especially off the half-back flank. I thought he got exposed overhead a few times, so that gives him something to work on in the off-season. But and obviously he had a few brain fades, but he's still adjusting to that position and incorporating that with his midfield role. But I was quite happy for Matthew, especially after last year, and he seems to be one player that really benefited from the extra fitness regime.
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag for me. He ended up 12th in our Player of the Year and 11th in the Best and Fairest, so he was around the mark a little bit. I guess the most disappointing thing for me was that last year he had such a good year as a midfielder, and this year, in that first half of the year, after he started, his first 3 or 4 games were really good, and then he really went downhill and just couldn't get the ball. That was his problem. We weren't sure if he was struggling with injury or just unfit or something like that, but then he moved on to the back flank as our sort of defensive creator and really shone there for a while.
I think his first game in that new role might have even been the Sydney game, which was kind of where we got this big turnaround in our second half of the season. I love Matthew Broadbent, the Cobra. I think he'll be a pretty key player in our next tilt at the flag, to be honest. I think he's going to play his best footy rotating between that half-back flank and the wing with a few bursts in the middle. His leg is fantastic. He's a good kick. And I think what Rick said earlier about his fitness, I'm really looking forward to Darren Burgess getting another pre-season into him. I think he's going to be someone who's going to really benefit from that. And I wonder how different this review would be if he didn't hit the post against Carlton and he won us that game with that 55-metre goal.
We'd be talking about that. We'd have a separate podcast for that as well.
I actually think his life would have been completely different because he would have been the poster boy for the last ever game at Amy Stadium with a goal right at the death for Port Adelaide in the black and white. It just would have changed his whole life.
Would have been in folklore.
I feel sorry for him now, yeah.
I think the thing he needs to work on is probably his decision making. Quite a few times this year, kicking out from defence or in the back pocket, he's really given up the ball in not the best circumstance, sort of kicking to a free opposition player 15 metres in front or something like that. I think that's happened about 4 or 5 times. And for a while there, it seemed to be a weekly event. But look, his first 3 games in defence, really, against GWS Sydney and Collingwood, those 3 key wins mid-season, he was probably our best player in all 3, really. All right, moving right along, and the next one is superstar Danny Butcher. Not a great year. We picked him up as a rookie a couple of years ago. He got a second year on the rookie list this year. His junior career was quite good. I think he finished second in the Morris Medal and won his club's best and fairest, but he just never really achieved that sort of form on the power list. Last year, he spent the whole year sort of either injured or picking up about 5 disposals a game for North Adelaide in their reserves. He moved to the Magpies at the start of the year, and again, just couldn't get his hands on the ball. He played 12 games, averaged 9 disposals a game. We tried to turn him into a shutdown defender. We dropped him mid-year, and he spent the rest of the season not doing a whole lot in the reserves. Do you see that as a bit of a disappointment?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I don't really have much to add on Danny. I think when we got him, I was hoping that maybe the Butcher Brothers would be this cult hit for us, but yeah, I don't really know what to add, really.
Well, I never had much expectation for Danny, and and it's no blight on Danny. Not everyone makes it, and but he never really stood out in SANFL or SANFL reserves, and I guess where to from here for him back to Victoria and see how he goes. And you never know, maybe a couple of years' time, a bit more experience, he might come back bigger and better.
I think when you're small, like Danny Butcher is, you need to be pretty quick, and he's not pretty quick. He's quite slow, doesn't have the best skills. Look, maybe he would have worked as a shutdown defender at SANFL level, but I don't think he ever really had that much of an AFL future with him, to be honest. All right, next on the list is Danny's brother John. Bit of a roller coaster year for Johnny Butcher. Once again, he didn't really have much of a pre-season. He started the year in the SANFL. He had a ripping game in round 2, picked up 10 marks and 5 goals. In the end, he played, I think, 10 games at AFL level. But again, look, his form was up and down. He played a really good game against St Kilda, kicked 3 goals. But he also had a couple of games where he just couldn't get a kick. Literally could not get a kick.
Yeah, I still have faith in John coming on. I think, I mean,
you don't sound too convincing there. You're going to say it, be convincing when you say it.
John Butcher will win the Coleman Medal next year.
That's much better.
Yeah, remember in 2011, you know, when he came on, his debut was like shellacking against Hawthorn, and even he wasn't that bad that day. But the next week, he kicked 6 against the Bulldogs, and he kicked 4 the week after against Essendon. Yep. And I thought, we've done it. This is it. He's going to be the future. I didn't actually even mean to say that then, but it really saddens me. I don't know. It just looks like he's scared of something. Like he's just playing in pain constantly. Or when he first came on, he was so carefree. He just played like he loved his footy, and now it looks like he's got so much on his shoulders, you know. And he doesn't. Like he's a second tall forward. Or like Schultz gets up, crashes packs, gets up, crashes packs again. And Butcher seems timid to even do it once, you know, and he's done it in the past. So I don't really know. I mean, I'm hoping that it's just his body, and if he can have a good off season, get his body right, and then hit preseason, fantastic. He'll be like a new recruit for us, you know. I mean, imagine if we can have that late season 2011 Butcher up and firing along Jay. It's just going to be amazing.
We need John Butcher to come good next year. It is key to our sort of top 4 chances that we need another key forward to come along, take the pressure off Schultz, take the pressure off Westhoff, and kick 30 to 40 goals. I really hope Johnny Butcher is that player, because if he has another year like he did this year, next year, he's pretty much delistable, in my view. I think, if he has another poor year, he won't have much trade value, and he'll really be fighting for his spot on the list. But look, the issue I have with him is he's just a completely different player to what we saw in the juniors and what we saw in his first couple of years on the list. Like, he doesn't lead anymore. He doesn't crash packs. He can't take a contested mark. He's kicking, like, he went from kicking 20 goals straight or something like that to, you know, kicking out on the full 20 metres straight in front numerous times. Is it a confidence issue? Is it a body issue? I guess we'll find out if he does have a full pre-season this year. But yeah, look, I think him coming good is ridiculously important for our side.
Well, we spoke about it last week, and the thing that concerns me is how long he's been in our system, and it doesn't look like we've even tried to rectify his kicking style either. You know, you would have thought we would have seen some sort of mechanical shift and change in that 3-year period, and we really haven't seen anything at all. And when you add that to all the other points that he needs to work on, you know, he's got a lot of work to do. But we just don't know what injuries he's carrying and how that's been impacting his game, and hopefully he gets that full pre-season and he can at least deliver 25 to 30 goals for us next year.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why he can't improve his kicking, to be honest. I don't understand why it's that difficult to change his action, because his action is horrible. Like, it's a two-handed drop. The ball swings around in the air before it hits his boot. Surely that's fixable this pre-season just by getting him just to kick, just to have shots at goal, like 100 times a day for, you know, the 90 days of pre-season. Just, this is your job, kick some goals, kick the ball, work on your kicking. And if he can do that, and if he can start to take those contested marks that we know he can and has in the past, he will be a hard player to match up on. But we really need him to come on next year.
With his kicking though, surely that's a technique thing that, like, our coaches should coach him to do.
Absolutely.
You know? Like, I don't understand how it's not happening, and like it seems like it's just common sense, you know. Like, and even if the coaches aren't doing it, the players. Like, we have a pretty strong leadership group. Surely one of them can, like Schultz. Schultz is a great ball drop. He's got a very, and even Jay doesn't have a really like a Josh Kennedy type like set run up. He's got a very casual approach, but he's he was a great set shot. Actually, this year he skimmed a few, but maybe it's just because I've got pretty high standards of him. But even like surely Schultz for half an hour after each training session, just run through it with him. Like, I don't know. It seems such an easy fix, and I just don't understand why it doesn't happen.
Maybe he doesn't want to fix it. No comment?
No comment.
Well, look, I mean, it's really his livelihood, isn't it? Because if he can't kick goals, if he can't take marks, that's it. He's gone from the AFL system, and pretty quickly.
I think some people have posed the idea of him being a centre-half back, and I just can't even begin to imagine that.
He'd need to put on a lot of bulk before he could play that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, Brian Taylor was saying on one of his broadcasts not that long ago that they had him out as a specialist goal-kicking coach for Collingwood, but they were saying to him that he could only spend like 10 shots a goal with each player because that's all they could afford with time. And, he was having a bit of a whinge saying, well, come on, what's that? That's nothing. So when I said maybe he doesn't want to fix it, it was a bit of sarcasm, but how do we know, if there's any, he might not be able to do a half an hour after training, with whatever their workloads are and their schedules or player rights or whatever in relation to training, maybe there's not that time. But I mean, that's where he needs to maybe take it on his own fruition to try and improve that. And it's very disappointing in 3 years in the system that the ball drop and the kicking action looks like it hasn't changed whatsoever.
Sometimes if you want to make it in the AFL, you've got to put in the extra yards.
That's it. That's exactly
right.
Best players in all professional sports train first at training, last to leave. If you want to make it, you work hard. Like,
that's right.
And back to the Brian Taylor thing. I reckon that they just said that to Brian Taylor because he was annoying every single player he was talking to.
Exactly.
Come on, surely not.
You can just imagine him behind you while you're lining up for goal. Oh boy, wowie! Just doing that, just annoying the living crap out of you. And maybe that's why Travis Cloak had such a bad ball drop for a while there.
Didn't Travis Cloak put the headphones in to try and get crowd noise? I think he started doing that just to shut up BT. Yeah.
Well, we might move on. Next player on the list is Alapati Carlisle. He had probably his best year for 2 or 3 years this year. Played 22 games. The thing I really liked about Carlisle's year this year is he really added a bit more of a rebounding style to his game. He wasn't just that sort of shut-down defender who couldn't lift his arms. He defended pretty well. He had some really good games, especially in the finals. He was probably one of our better finals players. But I really liked the fact that he would go on a few runs and take some risks this year.
I've got that exact thing written down here, Macca. So hold on. I just want to see more of the rebounding Bobby. Like that's I think where he plays his best footy when he just bursts through people, gives a handball off, and keeps on going. And for his size, he's very very good at that. I don't know if we can. Do you think we could have Jackson and Jonas be our two big lockdown key position defenders and get Carlisle to roam a bit more, or what?
No.
I probably prefer Jonas to play that roaming role just because I think he does it a bit better.
Yeah, that's right. That's probably Bobby's biggest flaw is that he's probably 2 or 3 centimetres a little bit short, but for that deficiency in height, I don't think he was overly exposed too often. Maybe the game here against Geelong, where we got torn apart. But that was part midfield delivery as well, wasn't it? But I think he didn't really show that his lack of height was too much of a negative influence. And like you guys said, his crashing through the packs and his aggressive run out of defence, I really admired his courage this year, and he really turned it around. So well done to him.
Yep, had a really good year, especially in the finals, as I mentioned. I think he kept Travis Cloak to minimal influence in the first game. And again, I don't think really Tom Hawkins did all that much in the second game either. So, yeah, he had a really good year, and I think he's important. Yeah, he's got a long-term contract, and if he can hold down fullback for the next couple of years, that'd be fantastic for the side, I think.
Well, it just shows the psychology in sport too, doesn't it? You know, I mean, you had Bobby who was struggling, and he gets a 4-year contract, and he's sort of come on leaps and bounds, and then you got Tommy Logan who just gets 1 year contracts, and that's how so he seems to perform, and you know, everyone's a bit different. Sometimes we forget that.
I think Burgess did wonders with Carlisle this year, to be honest. I mean,
He did.
He was, let's be honest, he was fat the last couple of years. He was fat, lethargic, you know, couldn't defend, was always 5 metres behind his opponent, you know, wasn't really spoiling the ball all that much. But his turnaround, especially in body shape this year, was great to see, because I didn't think he had it in him to do that. And in the end, he was, as I said, his rebounding was excellent. He was 3rd in rebound 50s. I don't think he's been that high before. And he was 1st in 1%ers for the club as well. So good on him.
That's fantastic, yeah.
And I think, again, in terms of the Player of the Year votes, we had a pretty similar result to the best and fairest. The club had him as 13th. We had him as 14th. All right, next player is Dominic Cassisi, the former captain. He had a bit of a rough year this year in terms of injury. He started late. He played a few games in the SANFL, then he came in. He missed a lot of games this year in a few patches with a hamstring injury. I'm not sure we will see him playing 22 games ever again, to be honest, just because of that. But when he was in the side, I thought he played really well. He had a really good game against Gold Coast. I think he went on to Ablett midway through the second quarter and really took him out of the game. His best game was against Sydney, where his sort of toughness and attack and that sort of clearance winning, contested ball winning ability against the Swans really helped us win the game.
Yeah, I think in that Sydney game, that's when he got kicked in the face as well, and that was
absolutely
phenomenal. You know, that was hard. He gives his all Dom. You can't really fault him for that. You mentioned the Gold Coast game. I think Gary Ablett had an absolute blinder on Kane Corns in that first quarter, and then Dom went to him and completely shut him down.
He did.
I still think we might see him next year, Macca. I think if he can have a good pre-season and get his body right, I think he can play a role for us. I think he might be in and out, but I think he could almost be a specialist shutdown player on certain types, depending on how we approach games.
I think if he's fit, he's probably around the mark in our best side. He's probably these days, he's probably in that sort of 20 to 24th player on our list. But I think it's just a matter of whether he can get his body right full time for a whole season.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I don't reckon anyone's really noticed it, but I was looking at some of the games and comparing it to last year, and I reckon his body shape's actually changed quite a bit, and his upper torso looks quite bigger this year to last year. So he looks like he's bulked a bit more weight on. Maybe that's caused a few hamstring issues as well. But yeah, I think there's still a spot for him. I did question it when he did come in after his injury, and I thought he did look a bit slow. But after that first game, though, I thought he definitely had a role, definitely on some of the bigger midfielders where maybe Kane sort of lacks a bit of strength to go with him. He seemed to do well, and I'm more than happy to keep him on the list next year and go around again. And if he's not good enough, well, hopefully one of the young boys pushes him out.
Yep. All right, next on the list is Tommy Cleary. He was a second-round draft pick last year, first year on the list. And he had a really good year at SANFL level. I'm not sure I really expected much from him because he did look pretty skinny at the start of the year. But he had a ripping year for Glenelg, really held down centre-half back really well for that club. He ended up playing 17 games at SANFL league level, averaged 14.5 disposals and 6 marks a game. And I think he's one to really look out for next year.
Absolutely. I think he might have to wait for an injury, though, unfortunately, because I think our defence looks pretty set. But I really want to see him play. I think actually he might get a game this year. He said his body might have been a bit too skinny, though.
Yeah, I thought he was probably a little bit unlucky at times. Again, probably just through the lack of missed games from our main defenders. I mean, Trengove, apart from his injury, he was really the only one that missed games. I mean, Jonas and Carlisle played the whole year.
Yeah.
And we had sort of Homsh and Blee thereabouts as well.
Didn't Cleary get mentioned by Darren Burgess as having very good endurance as well?
Yep. And he can play across the half-forward line as well. He did that in the juniors.
Yeah,
cool.
so I mean, this might be the year you might see him come on a bit more and push for senior selection. Obviously, I'm only going on stats. I never saw him play in the SANFL, and but I thought he was quite impressive with some of his SANFL stats, and I'm really hopeful that he's going to push up higher this next season and accumulate more and really be pushing maybe for a game at some stage. Hopefully no one gets injured, but he might be able to come in and fill in while someone's out.
The thing I like about him, he's almost like a little bit of a taller Paul Stewart in that he can take a good mark and he can run off and create, does lots of 1-2s and tries to create with the ball a bit. And as you said, I mean, his stats in some games were fantastic. He had a couple of 20-plus disposal and 10-plus mark games at SANFL level, which for a first-year 18-year-old player is pretty remarkable, I think.
Mm.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, and last player for this evening is Sammy Colquhoun. He's one that really, I think, shocked everybody this year in what he was able to achieve. I personally had no real expectations for him this year. I thought he'd spend sort of the year swapping between the SANFL reserves and the SANFL league side for Centrals. In the end, he stormed into the into the AFL side pretty early on. He had a massive start to the year for Centrals. I think just about every game he played at SANFL level was a 20-plus disposal game and took a lot of marks as well as that sort of rebounding, creative quarterback defender. He was a little bit shaky early on at AFL level, but when he came back into the side later in the year, I thought he had a really good patch of games against Adelaide, Geelong, Freo and Carlton.
Is he the youngest player on? He's the youngest player on our list, but I think he might be one of the youngest in the AFL.
I think he's definitely the youngest in the AFL this year.
Fantastic. Well, for the youngest player in the AFL to play in 2 finals, that's an enormous win for us,
Yep.
Absolutely. I think what it shows too. Sorry, there, Don. Is the SANFL can show players that have natural ability, and for an 18-year-old to be playing senior footy and in the SANFL, and as you said, Macca, racking up those possessions is quite amazing. I actually saw him at the Birdwood Footy Club last year when he was going away for one of the Snowden boys, a party there, and he's actually not that bigger young lad, big lad. So it'd be quite intimidating out with the seniors running around and getting poleaxed, and everyone wrote him off after that first game and thought he was scratchy and his disposal was iffy. But you know what? Even at AFL, he was still getting ball, and he's got a talent. He gets ball, and the more games he played, he was able to show us that he isn't that bad with the disposal either. And I think he's won a lot of people over, and everyone's got some high expectations for him now.
When he got a chance to have a couple of full games later in the year, because he was sub a couple of times against St Kilda and Brisbane, and then he played in the showdown, and I don't know, I think everyone sort of expected, from memory, there was a bit of conjecture about whether he should have been dropped for that game. He was kept in the side and had a massive game, kicked a goal. He was one of our keys to the victory that day, I thought.
Kicked goal in the last quarter.
Yeah, and set up one of Wingard's goals as well.
Yeah.
And for him to go to Geelong against that sort of match-hardened finals team and play such a good game as he did over there, I thought that was great.
I'm pretty sure he played 3 games against Geelong this year.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to hold him in good stead, just being in the midfield around those guys, So I think he's a weird one for next year because I think he had a really good year, but it's going to be pretty fierce for midfield spots next year when you think about the draft, and then if he can bring in someone through trade week. I think if he's going to play next year, then he's obviously going to have a big pre-season, and look out really. Is he the kind of player you reckon that will put on a lot of muscle, or is he just going to be that small player for his career kind of thing?
I think he's going to be that sort of Kane size because Kane's never really been a big sort of built player. Same as Tommy Logan as well, but that doesn't really stop him from throwing himself in. I think he's going to be around that sort of slight to medium build. And I don't know, I almost see him playing round 1 next year as a lock, and it's sort of a back flank for him to lose. sort of thing.
Mm. Ken Hinckley seems to be a big fan of
He
Sam.
loves him.
So
Yeah, he loves him. Yeah.
he does. And I think maybe the bulky players might be a thing of the past too anyway, with the changes to the interchange rules again and lowering the cap rotations. I think we're going to be looking at more endurance athletes, but I'm sure Mark Williams was saying that about 10 years ago. So eventually it might catch on and us prophetic people might be correct.
I hope he plays 17 plus games next year because, look, this year, as such a young player, he demanded a spot in the AFL side in the end just through regular, consistent, top-end games at SANFL level. And I can't really see that stopping next year, especially with another pre-season under Burgess. And if he can find a little bit of an extra yard of pace, that would be pretty handy as well, because I think that's probably one thing that might stop him as being a super long-term player. But look, I think he's got a massive future, really. And look, he could really become one of those key young players that we see turn into a 200-plus gamer for the club.
Yep, spot on. And it's good to see that we're going to have competition for spots, and there's going to be unlucky players. That's what we want.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, look, we might leave it there for this evening. That's our first batch of player reviews. We'll keep doing them over the next few weeks until we go through every player for the year. Obviously, trade month starts, I think, on Monday. So we'll have plenty to talk about then as well. Rick, thanks for coming on again, mate.
Yeah, no dramas. I appreciate the time, and I know that no one noticed that the Small Warrior is very, very confident that Pollock's still coming to port. He made reference to that tonight.
Good.
Ooh.
Good, I like that. He hasn't had much wrong before as the old TSW. So
no, he's pretty good with his mail, so fingers crossed. But had another good night, boys, and look forward to chatting about some trades next week.
Donnie, thanks for coming on again, mate.
No worries, mate. Always a pleasure.
And Rick, if we can get a few more fishing tips, mate, that'd be great.
Yeah. As I said to Don, who's a bit of a first up starter at the fishing, I reckon the best bet might be to see some of these rookie big footy fishing boys maybe head down to the North Haven breakwater and venture out on the breakwater, and you might find with the temperature and the water temp going up now after this rain, the garfish are going to come on the bite. You can get snapper there, and you can also get some flathead from the reports that I've read. You just got to make sure you read the reports and check the tides and see how you go. And other than that, Glenelg Jetty is probably the way to go. Or I think Port Stanvac Jetty is still going, or Port Noarlunga Jetty. One of those two. You can get salmon, trout, and Tommies off that jetty as well.
Beautiful.
Thanks, mate.
No dramas. Good luck.
Until next week.
Have a good one.
Cheers,
See you later,
guys.
boys. Bye.
See ya.
Let's go. Hi and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast. I am your host for this evening. Oh, fuck this. I'll start again. I forgot something in there.